Hello, so I guess we're back in recording to kick us off.
You know what they should do is, because obviously we're not editing this, it's one of those things where you have to like say why you should be watching. So we should be like, what, you made £1 million? Keep listening to find out how. So then, you know, you don't have that drop off of people watching the first few seconds.
Become more pro now. Got a ring light.
This is what sponsorship does, eh?
Right, I guess we should probably do an intro. So what's the program we're doing again?
Don't be a doorstop.
Don't be a doorstop.
I was thinking off the back of last week, we should change the tagline to be the tagline was hammer time last week. We should change the tagline to be keep hammering those nails, but it's not very catchy, is it? So keep nailing.
Yeah, I'll keep hammering. I don't know.
I'll keep hammering.
Some neighbours might not appreciate our audience.
Yeah, keep hammering. Yeah, that's the way that we sign out. We basically get a hammer and hammer the table. That's the way that we leave the conversation.
Yeah. So, jumping into today's topic, I have started
Dead air.
looking dead air. Elgato? Is it Elgato? The streaming people?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So they've got a Stream Deck mobile app that you could trial for a month. So I thought I'd give that a go, which is basically quick speeds to jump to new things. So we're switching topic by talking about technology.
It's one of those things that you always see them with gamers, right? Where they can switch to different screens, and predominantly they're switching different like covers on their different well, I don't even know what they're called, but different like layouts of their screens.
Green screen. Yeah, probably layers or whatever. Yeah, I've noticed I've been watching a lot of the guy that does the camera work for the Sidemen. He's been going in each Sideman's house and redoing up their setup, basically. So it's made me review my setup of going, okay, I know the Elgato brand on a whole is very good quality, but quite expensive from the look of the website. But basically, I thought, why not try the app to see what quality it is? But it seems like it's just shortcuts. You press a button and it'll do something, so you can make it mute, unmute. I've only downloaded it 5 minutes before, so you can tell I'm a pro and filled it out massively. Apparently there's plugins for Slack and Toggle and stuff like that, so I'm quite interested if you could go start timer, stop timer, say I'm on lunchtime. All these things that you have to do to save you 5 seconds a day. 5 seconds a day for 20 years is a good long time that you could use on
I think
holiday.
It's also the solo producer, right? So if you're the solo producer doing anything, then you don't have the extra person there with you when you're recording that thing at X hour. So it's always good when you have something quick to switch across.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, it's using any technology. As a fellow dyslexic person, it's using things like Siri to get it reading out to you, or looking at anything else that can help you speed read anything, or listen to stuff, or use Slack, but more the audio and video side. So I'm always an advocate for finding technology or spaces to help you just be the best you, help you.
For those who, be a hammer. For those of us that don't necessarily know the impact of dyslexia, so we're familiar of the term dyslexia, but what's the impact of dyslexia for you, if you don't mind sharing some of that?
I think for me, I've listened to a really good book on Audible, which massively helped, and it was called Adult Dyslexia. Let's see if I can fancy zoom in and zoom out.
See, this is where you have those buttons to be like, cut it in. Yeah. No, it's let's hope that it's not opposite. Otherwise, we'll read it. Yeah.
It is on mine, so I can't read
it looks good to me.
But any dyslexic person could probably read that, because that's fine. And it's basically saying how normally it affects 4 areas. I feel like I really need to listen to it and reprocess what it was saying. But it's basically, dyslexia affects your brain, and I guess your brain affects everything. So it's depending on, so an average person would probably be an average in all 4 sections. But normally a dyslexic person would be high in, let's say, 2 and low in 2, or high in 3, low in 1. So it's more of an extreme if you can tell they're really good at something and not so good at other things like weaknesses. So for me, it's reading. I'm a slow reader. Even if I attempt to read quick, the quicker I read, the more I don't process anything. It's as if I'm a reader for someone else and I don't have a brain.
And why? So let's go deeper into that. So why do you feel that your speed in reading is slow? What's the reason behind that?
I don't know. I think it's just. I think it's a combination of how my brain processes information is a bit different, but also I'm not a fan of reading. So I think a combination of I've not really pushed myself as much as other people that may be really passionate readers. I prefer to listen or to watch naturally. I think if you went learning styles, it'd be doing, watching, then reading. Reading's my lowest one. So any form that I can listen to someone, like podcasts or videos on YouTube and stuff, I'll happily multitask doing work whilst listening to I could happily listen to 2 or 3 podcasts a day and store more information than if I read one page.
Yeah, because the specific thing there is processing speed, right? So it's not necessarily that the speed is because you can't see the words or the words are jumping or moving. Because obviously you had people think that you needed glasses, right? I know you do wear glasses, but they thought that you couldn't read the words and that's why you were slow. But it wasn't that, right?
I became into a habit basically of any time I struggled to read something, I would go closer, and it was basically like a muscle memory that I'd always go closer every time I struggled. So everyone thought that there's different. I don't even know if it's linked to dyslexia or it's linked to other things, but that's why they were testing me with different like color screens and wondering if I needed glasses if I was getting blind. That's why I had to zoom in. So back when I was in year 6, I had to do an eye test, and I had perfect vision back then, so I had no issues with that. And trying to explain to adults that you've just done something that you just naturally do and you don't know why, it's quite hard because they always think you're doing it for a reason rather than just a bad habit that you've created yourself just to help you. Because I think in my brain, the closer I move to it, the more I can focus in all my energy, because reading was hard, all on a specific word. Because I think for me, I read word by word rather than sentence or paragraph like other people. So for me, it's one word, one word, one word, one word. What did I read? And it's like you're so focused on specific words that it's like trying to paint a picture with one word: glass, door, da da da, and you're there going, I didn't understand the sentence. Well, it's like, oh no, you picked up a glass in the kitchen to make yourself a drink. I didn't get that at all. So yeah.
And what about when people say that you should use like a color fill, like, you know, like a blue screen or like a blue piece of card or a red piece of card or whatever over the words so you can read it with a tint? How have you found that stuff?
Yeah, I didn't really need it at all. I think sometimes I do find it easier not reading like white with black because it's quite strong to my eyes. Quite a lot of my
Contrast,
technology, I do dark mode just for ease on my eyes. I don't think that's because normally with the colours, it's because the words and stuff sometimes can be moving around. So they say the colours apparently relax you or change it. I don't really know. I wasn't taking in much information back when I was in year 6. I just knew it wasn't for me. But when I was in secondary school, I knew someone that would always put I think it was either a green or blue screen in front or put glasses on with a tint. And for them, it helped them. So each to their own. And I think it is finding whatever works for you. And you don't need to pick up all your skills from school, because sometimes you learn things later on because you could comprehend more. Some people might have gone through school not knowing they're dyslexic and learning it later. Like we've looked into having support with dyslexic coaching because we got, I was going to say sponsored, but that's not the right thing. Grant.
It's a grant, yeah.
Yeah, grant.
And go into that. Go into that. So what's that like? What is that?
So we got some grant money, and they were basically asking what would I need for help, and were suggesting different things. So I asked for different apps to help me read and to write things down, so dictation, so you can speak into it. A lot of the time I tend to use Siri because it's usually quite good, but they were suggesting other programs, so I thought I'd go along with it. I was saying how I struggle with processing information and managing stuff. And then they suggested not only a program, but they also mentioned a coach, like a workplace coach, as they call it. I call it dyslexic coaching because that's what I'm going there for. People with ADHD or other gifts in their life will get different advice, but I was going more on the purpose of my main brain's going in for coaching for my dyslexic side, but I have noticed I've got ADHD tendencies, which I learned from my coach. Apparently it's very natural that if you've got dyslexia, you've probably got ADHD of some levels. So I had 8 sessions, so it was I could have them as spread out as much as I wanted. So a lot of the time I would do it weekly or fortnightly because it gave me time to process throughout the week of, okay, let's put this into practice of what my coaches suggested or said or bounced back to me. But to be fair, the coach that I was with, she was so impressed with how much I was trialing something, seeing if it worked, dropped it if it didn't, trial something else. Apparently she's never come across someone like me that was trialing so much within a week. And actually, she was writing some notes of some of quotes that I was saying to her.
You were
randomly.
coaching the coach.
Yeah. That's another podcast for another time.
Yeah. And when you say ADHD tendencies, explain what specifically for you jumped out.
So for me, I guess it's like focusing. So for a lot of people, if they're in school, they're like, this is the place to be in focus mode, so I will just focus. But for me, it's like, if I'm in school, but my brain doesn't think I'm in school, I can be just like wandering around thinking, like, looking back at school now, anytime I was tired, I used to sharpen my pencils because it meant that you had the opportunity to walk to the bin, sharpen your pencil. And me being shy at school, I didn't want to ask to go to the toilet all the time because then they would know something's up. But you could get away with basically going sharpening a pencil that doesn't even need sharpening because it would give you that time just to detox, to relax, to calm yourself down.
Wow, yeah,
to then basically go to work.
That's super interesting. I appreciate everything that you're sharing, and it's kind of like I literally flashed back to doing exactly the same task of like, yeah, you literally stood over a bin to sharpen your pencil, and then you go back to your desk. Like, how crazy is the fact that
and then you
used to happen?
Snap another pencil to go back.
It's one of those, right?
I feel like there should be a podcast of us just sharpening pencils for half an hour.
There's probably a version where you just do it really softly into the microphone and just sharpen this pencil really quietly. It's kind of one of those things where the teacher says, right, there's a new maths test, and you're like, time to sharpen the pencils. So that would be basically your time away to process or like recharge a little bit.
Yeah.
And finding an activity to fill in the gap there. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I find that how my brain works, it's either sprinting or lying down. That's the best way that I could explain it. That I could literally listen to podcast after podcast after podcast whilst working, or I can't process any information and I have to go for a walk. And it feels like there's two extremes, that the older I've got, the more I've relaxed how I do work, and the more I'll just wing it. Of what I try and create now is I categorize jobs. So if it's like a personal job, if it's an admin job, a creative job. So normally admin jobs, so anything to do with writing, reading, something that is like emailing or calling someone up that's quite boring. Admin is not my gifting. So I'll know that I'll need to be in a good headspace, that I'm learning in the morning is the best time to do admin jobs. Creativeness, so like design work or coming up with ideas, I prefer that. That's a lot more easier for me. So I don't mind when during the day I do that. But I tend to leave it more to the afternoon because I know if I've done an admin job for the day and a creative job for the day, it's been productive because I'm slowly moving each category forward. But then I'll also have a personal job. So with ADHD, people probably know way more information about this, but a lot of the time they need a lot of rewards because they get like a hit off the reward all the time to give them that buzz to then go into the next job. So I might have a category that's like personal. So it might be like, because I work from home, it's do the dishes or it's put on a wash. anything that I know frees up my evening that I can do gaming or watch Netflix and those types of things. It might be a personal task that if I'm really felt like I want to reward myself from for me, a hard admin job. For someone else, it might be completely easy. It is then going on, putting on the washing because I know that's something that's slowly happening in the background that later on when I've got my free evening, I could spend it with my wife, with friends, with family, and it sort of removes those boring sort of life admin jobs that I know I need to do, and it's sort of crushing them in and making most of my time whilst I've got the energy.
I find it's always a prioritization. So it's really interesting that you've been processing all this stuff, which is great because ultimately you're trying to figure yourself out, utilize everything that's around, and some things have grants and therefore are free or you get reimbursed for it. So you utilize everything and also kind of keep on trying to discover new stuff so you can basically optimize yourself. So then when you do come to those tasks, it's not as hard as it was 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, because you've understood yourself a bit more, found out what works for you, and then applied something. And I think the task related stuff, to me, I think what we forget is sometimes when you have something like dyslexia or ADHD, you see that like discovering the solution to optimize outside of that, and as you see it as a superpower rather than a failure. Once you've discovered that, if you were to say, hey, if you oriented tasks like this, and you said that to someone that doesn't have ADHD or dyslexia, they're like, actually, that just makes sense, right? It's beneficial for anybody and everybody. So what I found in chatting with you about it is like previously to this is some of these things around rewarding like make sense, and I benefit from those things for myself as well. So I think what we sometimes forget is, even though a group of people or an individual may struggle with processing, they then figure out, okay, for me, it works like ABC and I do it this way. And if it was if they were able to share that, then that actually might help other people in other remits. So I think the motivation, the reward stuff, the choosing kind of like to get rid of one thing that's a little bit harder so then you can do more enjoyable stuff. Those are really good patterns for anybody to apply, which I think is great.
Yeah, I think it's tough because obviously when we go to school, it feels like it's like the game Snakes and Ladders, but school only teaches you the ladders. You naturally from year one, you go to year two. Year two, you go to year three. There's a natural progression. There's a forward feel to it. Even let's say you fail in year one in like getting an F or something in one of your classes in maths or English or whatever, you still progress forward. But then instantly you either feel like you've won the game, you've come out with loads of A stars, or you've lost the game because you've quit the game. But I think life is way more, it's like complex. It is like 3D Snakes and Ladders, that even though you might quit, let's say school at 16, but then become a YouTube star and then make loads of money, if your element of success is money, then you've won. If your element of success is romance, but you're single, made loads of money with YouTube, then you've lost your game in your brain. And I think a lot of the time it is recognizing I think seasons, like you will have seasons of cold and rain and snow, but you will have seasons of sun and sunshine, and it's making sure that if it's a windy day, that you put the sails up. There's no point wrestling with the wind by trying to row. You put the sails up, catch the breeze. So if you've got that energy, you jump on it, you ride it as much as you can, but instantly when it goes, you don't try and drag a horse to make it drink water because it's just not going to work. And I think we need to give ourselves permission to be okay with us not working every second of every day, and give us permission to reward ourselves. Like, we're not robots. I think it is reward ourselves or have a break or find our niche thing. And I think it is easier when you get older because you understand yourself slowly more as you get on, and you bump into new people that might say, oh, you do that really good, or you do that interesting, or you do that differently. So you learn those different, that combination that makes you become you.
I think the key thing here is like, be kind to yourself, right? You are I heard somewhere that someone said, you are the person that will be around yourself 24/7. You're the only person that does that, regardless if you have a partner or have a family. You will be the person that's around yourself the most. Therefore, if you are the one person around the most, because you can't get out of yourself, right? You can't get away from that. You should therefore, be super kind to yourself, encourage yourself. And I think it is figuring yourself out in the sense of like any sort of motivation. I don't get motivated necessarily, if it's kind of like someone shouting at you, yeah, come on, you can do this. I get motivated if I'm like, I'm really good at this, and you kind of like instill stuff yourself. And it's just really about figuring yourself out, and you do it slowly. And one extra thing that I was thinking about when you were sharing was like, I read a book about, I think it was called Think and Grow Rich, I think something like that. And it came down to the idea of, you should think of days as efficient and inefficient, and what you want for success. And success, it can be defined in many different ways for many different people. To get that success, which is basically getting that vision that you have for whatever you want to achieve. So there's a success of achieving that, whatever that vision is for you. And vision is like some idea of, I want that car, or I want that, that job, or I want to run that charity, whatever that thing is. Success is basically equal to consecutive efficiencies. So if you can just focus on being efficient rather than inefficient, and do it over, so efficient, inefficient, inefficient, ultimately the efficiency, the volume of that efficiency will get you towards that goal. And that's the equation. It's as simple as that. Is your day, can you say your day is efficient or not efficient? And ultimately, again, efficiency.
Unless your goal is to be inefficient.
Yeah. Unless you don't want these things. Yeah. But and I think with everything has nuance and detail, and everybody is uniquely different. We should celebrate that. So this catch-all of like, what is efficient? Efficient might be, one thing. It might not be 10 things. It might be that one thing on your to-do list. There's a guy that I listen to that's gotten rid of his to-do list, in the sense of a list of things, because it's demoralizing, because it's never ending. And he changed it to think of just like one thing. And that one thing, the way that he works out the one thing, is the one thing that has the most impact. Again, impact is up for debate, right? So the one thing that has the most impact and possibly the most urgent. And what he used to do is then, as long as he's done that one thing, it doesn't matter then what you've done, right? So long as you've done the one with the most impact and the most urgency, and that's you can then class that as a day of efficiency. And then the buildup of that over time naturally is going to achieve that goal of yours. And he did this grid, which was basically urgent, non-urgent, and then low impact, high impact. And then he would just draw some, because obviously he needs to store some of the things he thinks about, and he stores it in that order. So then if he needs that one thing, he looks at the high impact, urgent box and tries to achieve something in there. And then he feels loads better about it.
So what is a technology that's helped you out with your weaknesses, would you say? What would be something that you're like, either it's helped you out now or helped you out in the past, school, uni, or whatever life stage that you've gone, actually, this has been quite helpful for me? I think listeners that might be wanting that to look into different sources of help.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's a good question as well. I think for me, mindset is the biggest thing. It's like your perception, your understanding of whether or not something is difficult or hard, and the way that you break that. I would say it's not necessarily technology as such, but it's like the medium, like media, as in audio, interviews and books. Like the idea that expertise is not necessarily how much knowledge you can store. It's actually knowing the right keywords to put into Google. Like that is an expert. It's not that you can memorize everything. It's that you remember the right keywords to get to the right answer in Google. And like little snippets like that, those insights basically just chill you out. So then you're better self. Like anybody that like stresses to get more output and puts more stress on themselves. In my case, I don't work like that. The more stress, the less likely I'm going to achieve something. And it's better to like release that and remove those pressures. And try and bring the goals to be like, yeah, what's that one thing that you can do? Well, cool. So long as you've done that and you do it consecutively. And I think like the second thing really, so I would say, yeah, audible books and stuff to like develop mind. to remove myself out of thinking, oh, I'm not good enough, or the insecurities that I have, or what's the one, imposter syndrome, like imposter. There's a really good interview with Stephen Bartlett and Lewis Capaldi. Lewis Capaldi is a singer, and he's super famous from if we played a song, you'd know exactly who he is. And people like that are discussing his insecurities or the imposter syndrome and that stuff. And he specifically was saying, when he walks into a room, something inside of him makes him feel like everybody dislikes him, like everybody doesn't like him. And like, that's Lewis Capaldi, right? Like, and you could take anybody. And I'm like, in the same way that, Lewis Capaldi feels that, like, sometimes I've felt insecure about that as well, So it's trying to balance the whole, the mindset game. And I think in a practical sense, literally my iPhone's reminders. And what I've done now is to go down to the whole, like, focus on one. It's better basically to go down to just flagging one reminder and then just showing that flagged list. So there's only one in that list rather than having 20 things in that list. So yeah, that would be me. It says here that you need to refresh your page and then continue recording. So if you reload your page, hopefully this will still work. And hopefully he'll come back. And if not, this will be one of the most interesting monologues to finish off.
That's fine.
Cool. I thought I'd have to monologue for a little bit there. But I think after this, maybe keep your browser open. And
I might need to shut it all off. It's saying refresh again.
Yeah, we'll hold it for now and we'll see. If Tom disappears in this recording and it's just me talking to myself, then this will be fascinating. So this is the beauty of using internet technology to record something. You never know if something drops halfway through.
Yeah, sounds good.
Did you catch what I was saying? Did you catch any of what I was saying?
Yes, I can hear it all. I can even see myself and see you, but there is just something blocking and making both of us slightly blurry, and I can't read anything on the page to know if it's saying if the recording's cancelled or not.
Well, it's telling me something went wrong during recording. Please have Tom Rowland refresh the page and continue recording. But you already have, so I wouldn't bother refreshing it again. What we could probably do is just you summarize your tech pieces, and hopefully this doesn't go to dead air.
Dead air.
Yeah. So what would you say from a technology perspective or resource?
So for me, I'm an iPhone user. So looking at the settings and accessibility, I always go in there to see what is useful. I make sure dictation's on. That's been a massive upgrade in iOS 16, that you could actually turn on dictation. You can edit the text and then speak, and then edit and speak. So it's not just you're just speaking or you're just editing, but you could actually do both in one. That has massively took a leap forward specifically for the phone. I know iPad and laptop will be coming soon. But that would be my super useful one. And then it's just encourage people to use audio on WhatsApp or messages to take in information more easier.
I think we've both benefited from that, even working together, haven't we? Audio noting each other. Yeah.
With Slack, something useful that we use.
Yeah. Or
I'd say that one is the main one, and then categorize either specific jobs that you hate doing and like doing, and try and summarize instead of jobs I hate, jobs I like, because then it puts a negative connotation every time you want to do, I do this job that I hate. Call it admin, or call it finance, or call it art, whatever. Imagine it's like a class in school. What would you call it? You might not like it, but you won't call I hate this. You might express your feelings towards that, but you call it art or CDT or PE. You call it something that's linked to the topics behind, but you're not saying, oh, I'm doing like my shit pile now. Like, no one wants to hear that, and encouraging that. And also have a pile of encouragements, things that you class as a win, either that gains back from your evenings like me, or it might be just text a friend during a day that you've not texted in a while that you've been waiting to do, that you could do during your cup of tea of the morning or afternoon. So yeah, or equally, when I use spaces and stuff like that, it might be physically moving around. If it's moving around the office, standing up, sitting down, you might have a different feeling of standing up. You might be more creative, or sitting down, you might find it easier to read if it's on a more comfortable seat. I'm constantly moving around the house, to hijack my brain to make it work the best I can, and moving stuff around the house to make me feel like I'm getting the most productivity out. And that doesn't matter if I'm sitting, standing, lying on the floor, sitting on the bed. It's finding whatever works for me for that day.
100%. Yeah, I think with all this stuff, and if we bring it into land, with all this stuff, the most important thing is self-reflection, to identify, is there a way that you can make things easier for yourself in a processing or execution way? And if there is, why not try it and experiment with it? Because you literally are going to be around yourself until you pass away, right? Like, you're the person around the most. So why not work with yourself to figure out the best optimum way to process things, remove those stresses, like decrease, like remove that kind of bar, because you're the one that sets the bar. Remove that bar, recognize that everybody is in, similar mind states of whether or not it's insecurities and stuff. And yeah, don't be afraid to go and get counseling. Like, I've done counseling, I've done group counseling, like individual counseling. It's all about trying to find the most consistent version of yourself. And I think that's what therapy brings, or that's what counseling brings, is helping you to find a consistent version of yourself that's the best consistent version of yourself.
Yeah.
Sweet. Well, I hope that there wasn't just a massive dip where you've exited out of the call.
Dead
And
air.
I've just, spoken. Well, I know I've not spoken, and then I speak at the end. But nonetheless, I'm going to publish it. And if it fails, then we can just rehash what this was last week. So what was our final tagline to wrap us out?
Dead air.
Hammer it. No, what was it? What did we say?
Nail it.
Nail it. Nail it.
Nailers.